Hey, this is Kahja Elliott, Bronx born and raised, ATL made, Bay Area becoming, and this is the As Told By podcast. All right, we're back with this week's episode of the As Told By podcast. I've been ripping and running, which I love to do, but I'm tired like everybody else. So this week, I'm back to recording at my house with one of my good friends.
Yes.
Patty Dingle. Patty, Patty's an Oakland native, and she is the owner and operator of White Horse Bar in Berkeley, California. Now, Patty, White Horse Bar, if I remember correctly, is the oldest gay bar in America. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It is the oldest operating gay bar in the United States. It's never been closed down for 90 years.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And you own it.
I own it, which is still really strange to say. Okay. It's not real to me. But, I'm working all the time. So, it's been fantastic.
Yeah. And in addition to your work at White Horse Bar, you also are, so just a step back about how we met, Patty, because I've known you almost all of my time in the Bay. We met at my first job when I moved here in Foster City at Visa. We were working there together, and you were a DEI professional. Before that was a hot buzz topic, hot buzz career, hot buzz word. So talk a little bit about, besides the bar, the work that you've done over the years in that space.
Yeah. So fortunately for me, the bar is like a hobby, a fun hobby. I have a crew. I employ 12 people. They take care of everything for me. So when I say I'm working, I'm not literally there like slinging drinks, right?
Shoveling ice.
I'm paying the bills. So I have a day job. I work for Riot Games. I'm the global head of diversity and inclusion. I've been in the diversity space for over 20 years. And yeah, we met at Visa when I was the first hire of their new chief diversity officer. I was the first person she brought onto that team. And you're right, it was hot then. But Visa was the perfect place for me to do the work because they were serious about it. Mm-hmm. They wanted to make progress in the space. And everywhere I've been since then, it's been the same way. Mm-hmm. But now, as we're facing some, challenges from a political landscape, from a social landscape, legal landscape, the work is a bit more challenging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just with the things we talked about the bar and then with your career, so that starts to give like an indicator of intersectionality for you, right? You own a bar that has historical roots in LGBTQIA community, and then you've been doing DEI work for over 20 years, and then you have just your heritage, right? So talk a little bit about your heritage.
So let me just back up and say, identity is really critical in our space, in the world, right? Mm-hmm. And, one cannot go out and get a degree in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, they have certifications and all that other stuff right now. But let's face it, a lot of the reason why people like us are in this space is because of our experiences based on our identity. Mm-hmm. The thing for me, though, is being Japanese and Black, being part of the LGBTQIA community as well, becomes incredibly complicated. And it becomes complicated because a lot of how you're treated is based on how people perceive you. Mm-hmm. And for me, being perceived as I am never happens, right? It never happens. And people want to box you in because it's comfortable for them. And so I own this bar. Now all of a sudden it's a lesbian bar. And I'm like, oh, absolutely not. Mm. This is a bar for everyone. Mm-hmm. One, from just a capitalist mindset.
All money spends.
All money is green, mm-hmm. right? Everybody's money is green. And if we were still at Visa, that wouldn't land very well. But the real reason why I state that is because I am being intentional about creating a space that is welcoming to everyone, mm-hmm. even allies. When we say allies, I like to say accomplices, advocates for us, right? People that actually will help us get away and drive the getaway car. So that's incredibly important for me. The other part is this intersectionality of my ethnic identity. And I have been told over the last 5, 6, 7 months that the White Horse is way more diverse now, not just from a gender identity perspective, but from an ethnicity perspective. You see a lot more Black and brown people in there, which was an actual goal of mine. Mm-hmm. So I laid low for a very long time. And then when I finally decided to kind of come out, I came out as a queer woman of color owner. Mm. And I think that has made an incredible difference with the level of comfort that people now feel by coming to the White Horse.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Bringing your values with you to this endeavor.
Absolutely. And because it is a hobby, and when I say hobby, I'm not making a living off of this bar. Mm-hmm. I think you can take different chances, and you can, the appetite for risk is very different, right? Because if anything were to happen, it's not like I'm going to lose my house or, anything like that. So I can take a lot more risk without the bar being something that I'm dependent on financially. But I have to keep in mind my staff who rely on that as their job.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, so that gives you a little bit of information about some of the spaces that Patty is standing in. But if you're listening, I know you may be thinking, well, what does this have to do with food? And,
right.
We talked about the fact, and I have been thinking about it, as the season has progressed and talking to people who are in, different avenues of the food industry. But even if you don't have a career in food, everyone is eating, right? And everyone has a food history and what I call like a food personality from the families that they come from. And so I was happy to have an opportunity to talk to Patty coming from a family that is of Black and Japanese descent, because what an interesting intersection of food, right?
Yeah.
That must have presented for you growing up. So take us to the beginning. Just tell us a little bit about your parents, how they met, and just lead us into where Patty came into the story.
Okay. Excuse me. So my parents have a very unique story. My mother, let me back up. So my mother was 38 years old when she had me. My dad was 46. Mm. My dad is my mom's second husband.
Okay.
Her first husband was also Black.
Mom's keeping it consistent.
Mom had a Mom had a type. So, and my mom had 3 kids with her first husband, a daughter and 2 sons. And then here comes her first husband passed away. She met my father, had me, and here we are, this family of, Black and Japanese kids, but different dads. And then my dad was married before my mother, had 2 boys. He was married to a Black woman. So I was
Blage and Brady Bunch.
Blage and Brady Bunch. But here's the thing. I was so much younger than everyone. There's a 12-year age gap between my sister and I. And so what ended up happening is that she became like the one who watched me. So everyone thought I was her child. And if you saw my sister, we sound alike. We have the same features. We have a lot of the same. She's chocolate. She's just dark. And so people were very confused by that. But what I will say is, despite the age difference, food really connected us based on our various identities. And so my parents and I would eat dinner at the same time every day. My mother never got rid of her Japanese heritage when it would come to mealtime. Mm-hmm. And if anyone knows anything about how Japanese people eat, it is very curated. It takes a lot of time. And, Americans rush, right? And so she intentionally created an environment, I should say, where we took our time. That typical have dinner together, have a conversation, and all those other things. And we didn't sit at a table. We sat at like a breakfast bar.
Okay.
So she was on the other side of the counter, and my dad and I were on the opposite side. And we would just talk. But here's the thing. On any given day, we would have, teriyaki, which is a true Japanese dish.
Yes.
We'd have teriyaki. We would always have rice. We had that rice cooker that kept the rice warm all day long. But then you turn around and have collard greens.
So you had a good mix.
We had a good mix. And here's the thing. My dad was the one that taught me to make collard greens. And anybody who's had my collard greens know that they are the best collard greens in the entire world.
I've had Patty's collard greens.
Okay.
I can attest that they were very good. Very good.
Very good, right? Because that's my dad's love in there, right? But my mother learned how to make the foods my dad liked. You can imagine this guy is from Vance, South Carolina.
Uh-oh.
Never had a piece of raw fish in his life. Never even tried it. But when I say like the curated part of these meals, my mother made sure she had all of her Japanese, kind of dishes, but also took care of my father. So she made the best fried chicken in the world. And I'm not saying that to be stereotypical. We all know we love some fried chicken.
Finding out a lot of cultures love fried chicken. I just recently had Southern Thai, hot yai, Korean fried chicken.
That's
a lot
right.
of folks like fried chicken.
And who they learn from? Us.
Yes.
Us.
Yes.
So, and my mother would make, smothered pork chops, and my dad being in the military really kept it basic, but was so phenomenal. Like the flavor she would get out of these meals. And, listen, I didn't know back then that this was the bomb meal. It was until later you try other things, right? So that's why I think for me, I'm not a foodie. Food kind of doesn't motivate me a lot. And I think it's because my mom was such a great cook. It's hard for me to find things that move me like my mother's food.
Same way.
And then, check this out. My dad could get down on some fried rice.
Okay. Well, hold on. When you said your dad was from South Carolina, immediately my mind started going to the correlations between this Japanese woman's cooking sensibilities and his, and rice being the connector.
Rice is the connector.
Rice is, the crop of crops coming out of the history of South Carolina, but also coming out of Asia and Japan as well.
And it's different types of rice.
Yes.
Right? So, of course, in our house, it was the short grain, Japanese rice. But my dad turned it out and would make an amazing fried rice. But listen, let's face it. He can make three things: greens, fried rice, and some black eyed peas. That's it.
Oh, that's enough.
Right? But he would get down with it. Now, the other thing is, I don't eat these today, but the ham hock situation, and all those things you bring in to create those flavors. So there was this amazing merge of experiences that I had through food with my parents, and seeing this big 6'4" Southern black man in the kitchen cooking in a cast iron pan that had been in my family for 60 years already. Wow. That I have today.
You still got it?
I still got it.
I love that.
I had it sandblasted, and you don't want to lose that seasoning. That's another reason why the food tasted so good.
Pots were seasoned.
Pots were seasoned. No one knows about that today, right? So it was,
it
was amazing.
Yeah, that's those seasoned pots make all the difference. Non-stick who?
Non-stick who?
Right.
Right.
Teflon what?
Teflon what?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then like you said, back to the rice thing. The staple. It's just a staple. Right? It's just a staple. And today, we got brown rice, quinoa, all these other things, which are great, healthier for you. But, the rice pot was cooking all day.
Yeah, yeah. And, you've grown up in Oakland from the Bay Area. And the Bay, I've been here for 10 years now. I don't think I was aware moving here I know I wasn't aware of the history of Asian and Black culture, the
Yes.
history of the coexistence of Asian and Black culture
Yeah.
in this area of California specifically, and not just, any one part, the diaspora of Asian cultures, right?
Yeah.
Korean and Vietnamese and Cambodian and Filipino and all the cultures that are so closely, either they're living right next to or in business right next to, or agriculturally speaking, they're connected to Black culture as well. So talk about some of the food experiences or just the nuances of growing up in the Bay Area that you can see that pulled from both of these cultures.
So it's super interesting that you say that, because there's a coalition, Asian Black Unity, and it derives back from the Black Panther Party and all that. And I actually have a T-shirt from that time, and it's awesome. It's like a tiger head with like an oak tree in it. But I think what I'll say is this: struggle is sometimes struggle, and when you are connected to another community that sees your struggle, there's just, I'm going to use the word kinship that just evolves from that, right? I think generations of immigrants, I think have a lot to do with it, whether you're a first generation person, second, third, fourth, whatever it is. Your environment shapes you. And Oakland, by far, is the most diverse place that I've ever experienced. Now, I did grow up about 120 miles south of here.
Oh, okay. I thought you were East Bay native.
Well, listen, that's relative, right? So, but what I will say, this is the reason why I'm mentioning this. I grew up in a town called Seaside, California.
Okay.
And I call it the Oakland's on the Central Coast. Because Seaside is very much like Oakland. It was very Black growing up. Now there's military around there, so that influenced a lot of the blending of cultures, right? But you're kind of right by saying that I'm an Oaklander, because Seaside was very much like Oakland, and we would come up here all the time. So, the correlation of, I'm going to say, mixed kids and what you experience, like I'm going over to my friend's house who's half German and Black, and like it's Filipino and Black and Korean and Black. My best friends were Korean and Black growing up, which is why I love kimchi, I love gakdagi, I love bulgogi, I love all that, right? But to your point, the reason why we're here is food brings people together.
I'm so happy it does.
Right? It brings people together, whether it's in someone's house. I mean, coming here today, you have a spread out for us. It's just a connection. And it's really not about really the actual food itself. It's the meaning of the food.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it could get real deep.
It does get deep, right? There's a conversation that I hear, every now and again going on with regard to the dining space about fusion cooking, right? And that's been, all the rage for some years now. And there's two POVs, right? There's the one that we're talking about where, yes, you get to know cultures and build community through these shared food experiences and these sharing of experiences of other people's food. But there's also a diluting that can sometimes happen with that, particularly when you start to apply things like farm to table, California style, or wherever, right? East Coast style or Southern style. And you start to maybe try to superimpose that over very specific culturally literal applications of cooking, right? So putting your DEI hat back on, but also keeping on your hat of intersectionality, what do you think is the right way to bridge that gap in cuisines without filtering out those cultural nuances that are really at the base of what those cooking styles are?
Yeah. Wow, that's a phenomenal question. And I think what immediately comes to mind is respect the roots. And the reason why I say that And I'm a shout out Chef Nelson over at Sobre Mesa.
That's the homie. What's up, Chef Nelson?
Right, because and he don't know me from no he don't know me. But I have frequented his bar with good food. That's how he positions it. And I was fortunate enough for him to deliver a dish to us. And it was a Dominican dish. And when he brought it, he literally was like, this is my family. Like, this is my family on a plate. And he elevates food. But the roots of that dish were there. They were palpable. It was moving when he said that. I was fangirling a little bit when I saw him because I loved the show he was on. But what I'll say is you can elevate food, and even using the word elevate is a little bit like, why are you saying you're elevating it, right? When the history of it is so powerful.
Yeah, I'm going to bookmark that point. Keep going, but I want to come back to that because I had an opportunity to hear a conversation about that a couple of months ago. I want to bring it up to you.
Right. Okay, so we're going to get back to that because I can go on and on. So putting my DEI hat on, I think we have to always respect culture, whether it's food, whether it's dance, whether it's music, whether it's, fashion, right? And pay homage to that, right? Call it out. And I think, and I'm going to kind of generalize here because I have not done any scientific research on this, but I think the thing about Japanese people in particular is that they are respectful to where the craft has come from. This Japanese breakdancer, gold medal winner, women's breakdancing, and with the Olympics and breakdancing, that's a whole other show.
Ciao. I haven't seen any of it. I just saw like clips on the internet, and I'm like, as a Bronx native, I'm like, how far we have come.
Listen, so I didn't have necessarily a problem with the Japanese woman winning gold. And keep in mind, I have not seen a lot of the other competitors, but in my heart, I feel like Japanese people respect other people's cultures, especially the younger generation, right? And even as a young person going to Japan, I felt that because Japan is a very homogenous society. Everyone has dark hair. Most everyone has dark eyes. There's a distinct look. So I go there and I stand out. And that's why when black folks go over there, they think you're an automatic celebrity sometimes, right? You're like this exotic thing. But Japanese people have always struggled to have identity. And so when they can take on like the 50s greaser style, they go 1,000%. Okay. And I saw it before my eyes. And you have people go over there getting perms so that they can have afros and all that. And some people might think that that's not right. But I have to say that I do feel like, as far as I know, there's a lot of respect on where all that comes from.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that as well, Patty. And just, I know we're talking about from a food perspective, but even seeing that, I had that initial visceral reaction, right? Because I do think sometimes we can cosplay black until there's real tangible things on the table, right? And then everyone has the ability to kind of retreat to their neutral corner. But I couldn't help but also say, for years, one could make the argument, well, are other women cosplaying as these other races as we purchase hair from these other countries that have other textures? So it just becomes a lot of gray area to try to make the separation. And you could argue similarly the same thing with food. And back to that point you were saying about elevating, right? Food, and why are you having to say it's elevated? I was at a panel in June in Chicago, and Jamila Robinson, she's the head over at Bon Appetit, and she was moderating the panel, and she talked about not liking that word as it relates to food, because what we've seen happening as of recent in the food industry is a lot of acclaim and media attention for chefs and restaurants that are centering foods that were from what have been regarded for years as poor or third world countries, Haiti, countries in Africa, right?
Right.
Countries in Southeast Asia. And those are now at the top of the quote unquote food chain
Right.
for where you're dying to get in to make a reservation. So why are we trying to elevate that? And what does that even mean? Versus why don't we come in and just experience that food as is?
Right. Absolutely. And I think it's playing into what is considered the norm. But let's face it, that's white America. Like that has what set the standard in so many spaces. Beauty, food, even how we live, our homes, all these things, right? So when you were talking, I was thinking about the sushi burrito. I don't know why that came to mind. Remember, this was like a little trend a few years ago. And obviously you don't know about it because it didn't stick. Right? But it was trying too hard as well. Right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just have to keep things so simple. And the reason why my mother's cooking was so amazing, she wasn't using 20 spices. You know, she kept it simple, but she did it with such precision. Right? Mm-hmm. She didn't need a thermometer to know if the chicken was done. You know, it's that whole like just taste it and go and pinch this and pinch that. No recipes, no nothing. So this whole kind of, you know, this term, it's like calling the black woman articulate. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's insulting. And I've been caught in that too. You know, I'm watching these shows and they're like, we're going to elevate the street taco. And these chefs come up with some good things, but at the end of the day, if it don't taste like a street taco, it doesn't matter to me.
So just do what you will, but maybe call it something else.
Yeah, and let's talk about like why you said these third world countries were able to create these dishes. Resources are very limited. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, when resources are limited, creativity and innovation surfaces. So when we talk about people that uses the whole pig or the whole whatever, right? That's because resources are not there. And I feel like that is such a critical message, right? And ways that people cook things. One of my favorite shows that I watched was all these street food vendors from these different countries, some even being like Michelin star street food. And it's about their hardware. Mm-hmm. It's about the heat. It's about the ingredients too, but it's also about like the style, the kinesthetics of it, like how they're cooking it and how they're flipping it and how they're stirring it and how they're like folding it in. Like it's an art. And having friends that are chefs, having friends that are food stylists, having friends that are chefs from like, you know, high end meaning it just costs more. Mm-hmm. Don't mean it's better.
Right.
To like, you know, and I'm not going to say low end. I'll say high end to like affordable. Mm-hmm. Right. They're still chefs. But then you get into this, who's the cook? What's cook, chef? These are all kind of, you know, interchangeable terminology. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it's exposure. So what you're doing is giving exposure to different perspectives on food and all that. But I guarantee you, I can go down to International right now and probably have one of the best food experiences that I've had in a long time. And who's in the back cooking? That's the person that should be recognized.
This is true. That, you know, those are the kinds of things that just meld into the back of a city, right? It's hard to go in and pinpoint and identify, but who really is behind that street food that you can get in these areas that are not, you know, you're not going to find lots of sit down restaurants there, but you can go and have, like you said, some of your best food experiences in a city. Anytime I travel places, and people who travel with me, can attest to this. I'm always looking for the hood because that's where
you got to go to the hood, right?
I'm always looking for the hood, to my betterment or not. Sometimes it was like, no, you need to stay out of certain hoods. But I always know that if I find the hood, I'm going to find some good
You
food.
from the Bronx. I'm not worried about you.
Just listen. I'm good on any MLK Boulevard.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
the great prophet Jay-Z says.
That's a great point because I worked in Dubai for a while, and Dubai is just over the top. Everything. There are brunches on Saturdays because a lot of Europeans go there. I mean, the amount of food, it's actually kind of ridiculous, right? But I had a coworker take me to Old Dubai.
Oh.
And I was down with it because we were going to go to this spot, a kebab spot that was super famous by the local people, by the locals, right? The UAE folks. And I'm not talking like the princes and the royalty and all that. These are like the people that are working in the hotels and all this other stuff. Best meal ever. Hospitality off the hook. Crowded, loud, wild, all these other things. And it was phenomenal. So I'm down with you on that. I will admit, I do like a nice little fancy meal every now and then. But every time I walk away from that, I want to kind of go back and go to, when I'm in Amsterdam, I just want the frits. Like, I just want the fries.
Hey, these are places I've yet to travel to, but these are the things that are like on my radar for going there. And like you said, it's not, maybe instead of elevated, it can be inspired by.
And I think individuals can even say, like, I put my individual stamp on it. So you have to put Singapore on your list.
I'm going, Patty.
Oh, that's amazing. So you need to go to the market.
Okay.
The night market
part. Wait. Just look, a sidebar for a second. So I'm going to Thailand in the fall.
Okay.
I'm actually scared to death. Different story. We'll talk about that offline. Okay. But I'm going to Thailand, and I set it up on purpose to have a 24-hour layover in Singapore. Because
we need to talk.
I'm like, either I'm going to be on a lot of espresso shots and a lot of 5-hour energy or something but I need to maximize that 24-hour time frame and not let jet lag get the best of me.
I hope your 24 hours is at night.
I don't know. I need to look at my time. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about it.
Okay. I'll set you up on that.
Okay.
And I might even have to hook you up with somebody so you can get right to it when you get there.
Okay.
But yeah, Singapore, by far, I've been there a few times, and the food never disappoints.
The hawker stands are amazing, I heard.
Oh my gosh. You got to make sure you understand your heat preference. Because
don't get caught up.
Somebody's mild is going, your mild is somebody's not mild. So, and listen, you need to drink some water.
Something.
But Singapore is fantastic. That's a place, so yeah, I'm excited that you're going. So yeah. So I also have had world travels through my jobs and have been able to experience food on many levels. But then again, it's the authenticity of it. It is the kind of natural way, and places that don't want to cater to the tourist is where you want to go. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They're like, no, you cater to us. We will not cater to you.
Right. As it should be.
As it should be.
As it should be. I'm so excited about that. When you think about foods that are intrinsic to certain cultures.
Sure.
And this whole conversation that's been happening in the last couple of years around soul food. Are you in that audience of people that think that is a term that has applicability in different places? Do you feel like it's just okay? Look, this is good because I was of like mixed opinion. I could go either way. and I always reference the program on Hulu, Searching for Soul Food, with Chef Elisa Reynolds. And it was this episodic series about her traveling to different regions, some here in the country, some internationally, to highlight these different cultural iterations of soul food from the perspective of the way and the means through which this developed in the Black community are similar in some cases to the way and, you know, the school of thought that this developed in other cultures. And then some people were like, hell to the no. Soul food is a very specific thing. And if you want to call your food from your origin something different, that's something totally different. So what do you think about that moniker of soul food being something that's widely applied to different ethnicities?
I jumped in and said no right away, and I'm sticking to it. Here's why. And listen, again, I'm not going to claim to know historical context on this, but what I do know is having a Black father and seeing what foods he enjoyed that brought him joy, that not only nourished him, but I think the reason why that was so important to him is because that's all he knew growing up. That was his soul. You could say that, right? And soul, to me, I get it. It's what's in you, yada yada, all that. But I like for us, our community, to hold on to that. Don't give that up. Don't give that to anyone else. But the interpretation of the word, I think, is what we're really dealing with. I don't want to discount heritage or what people feel is like they're part of their soul, right? So it's like the definition of soul food, and there's definition of like what's in our soul. You know, it's a more emotional thing.
Yeah.
But for me, in my house, soul food meant these are the dishes that create that category. And these are the dishes that brings my Black father joy and makes him feel at home, which is why my mother took the time to learn how to cook these things. So I don't want anybody else claiming that. I have to be really frank about it. We got to hold on to that, I feel. Maybe call it, I don't know, your native food. I don't know. But something. Soul means something so different to me.
I hear what you're saying.
You know, and I can't, maybe I'm just not, it's a feeling for me. And it's what it means to me. If I'm going out for soul food, those are specific things that I'm looking to consume.
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
I'm not going to get something from another cultural background. I'm not going to expect that if I go get soul food. Right.
Yeah.
I want mac and cheese.
I want
some yams.
And you're going to bring your own greens because you said yours are the best?
Mine are the best. I won't eat anybody else's greens. And, you know, I'm going to want that type of food. So that's just my mindset on it. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we are coming into a very significant cultural moment around, you know, mixed race heritage and DEI come to life, you know, as we are walking into primetime election season and looking at the first mixed race woman candidate. Kamala does identify visually as a Black woman, but she does not shy away from her Southeast Asian heritage.
Absolutely.
It's just a very interesting time for what this could mean as far as the platforming of mixed race heritage, which on a political stage is great, but you know that makes its way down to culture, which makes its way down to food. So what are you most excited about when you think about what this could mean for what culture and specifically food culture could look like in the next few years in this country?
Ooh, my goodness. I don't know. I think and her, Kamala's mom lived less than a mile from here.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Across the street from a friend of mine. She doesn't live there anymore, but I think that's significant because the Oakland piece is there too.
Yeah.
Right? The Oakland piece is there too. So I think you said it. She is seen as.
Yes.
Right? And, I think the HBCU thing has come up. You see all the videos online with her, in the line, dancing and stepping and all these other things. And so I apologize to all my HBCU people. I don't know if I framed that correctly. But what I am not seeing is the magnification of her Indian heritage. I'm not seeing that as much. And the reason why I say that is because from a food perspective, it can go either way. That's why I just don't know. Like, for example, Barack had, Hawaiian roots, and they would show him in Hawaii, going back to how he grew up and, his experiences. And, Hawaiian food is also very kind of unique and special.
Yes.
And that was his identity, even though that was not his cultural background. So I guess what I'm saying is it depends on which route she takes that will determine kind of like this food culture or phenom that may come out of it. Because I guarantee you, if we see her eating traditional Indian food, that may have an impact on that cuisine, right? I think if we see her eating soul food, right? I must just say it. That's going to have an impact there. But this is the biggest difference that I see, and I'm going to bring up Barack again, is that President Obama, I should say, he was just black. And I had a hard time with people not identifying him as biracial. And I think it was because his mom was white, right? The biracial narrative for Kamala is way more amplified than President Obama. And I think it's because she's black and Indian. And, listen, in that Indian space, the food is powerful. It is prominent. It is influential. It is complex.
Deliciously complex.
It is complex. She is complex in my mind. So we're going to have to see how this plays out, because I can honestly see like White House dinners featuring Indian food, right? I could see her, doing more in the Indian community. And I'm not saying she doesn't do anything. I just haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
We just got to get over that threshold, because she has a unique opportunity to show both sides, right? And I also don't like when someone says, well, I'm half this, I'm half... No, not, this is not a math formula.
Put your calculator up.
Right? She's those two things. It's clear.
Yeah.
So Kahja, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see.
We'll see, but I'm really excited, like you said, for what it could mean, the inspiration for people to do, whether it's at the White House or just across the country. This huge influx of chefs that do these pop-up dinners and curated dinners and what people can put together. So while yes, it is amazing that we all are seeing all the fundraising happening and all of those things. I also challenge people just from a culinary perspective, right? Get a little curious about her history, the history of where she comes from, the foods and the culture that is part of where she comes from. Dig into that as well, not just from like a research perspective, but like you said, from a complexity and a deliciousness perspective as well. Treat yourself, right? And go find out what Indian and Southeast Asian cuisine is all about, if that's not something that really has been on your radar that you may have frequented. I think, like you said, it's a very unique opportunity for her to put light on the overlap of these two things that are part of her that are so very different.
Yeah. And let's add on top of that, Oakland. If someone needs to ask her, what's her favorite spot in Oakland? Because she was in the streets, right?
I know she was. She got an answer.
So interesting. So I'll just say this last thing. Where I work, our CEO is Indian, and he did a panel with our Asian Pacific Islander employee group, and someone said, "Hey, what's your favorite Indian dessert?" And you would think one would just be like, "Okay, here's my favorite Indian dessert." He went on to say, "Here's my favorite dessert, and here are the reasons why." And it had such an amazing story, with his family. And he wasn't really a sweets guy, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what it was, but that question can lead you down a whole other path where you learn so much more about someone. And because if you ask me what's my favorite spot in Oakland, I'm gonna be like, well, here's my favorite spot, and here are the reasons why, and here's how many times I've been there, and this is what I like, and this is what I think. Let's go there. It's so back to my point earlier. It's more than the food, right? We need food to nourish our bodies. We need food to live. But when we are intentional and we go somewhere to have a meal, and we choose who we're having the meal with, that to me brings me back to my family at the table every day. That was our thing. So I try to make my thing that too. And it could be us sitting right here with your amazing spread that you put out for us, because food connects people.
Creating community through food.
That's right.
Bam. Patty, tell people where they can find out more about you, about White Horse Bar, and about all the other amazing things you are a part of.
Well, listen, Instagram is all we need to do at this point. Instagram, White Horse Bar. Please follow us. You'll see all of our amazing programming. Me personally, people can reach out on LinkedIn on a professional level. My Instagram is EP Dingle. You won't forget it if I tell you mingle with Dingle. And Kahja, thank you for having me. This is phenomenal. Absolutely. You've been my sister for so long.
Yes.
Inviting me to your home has been phenomenal. This has started off my day on such a wonderful note. And we gonna get you right in Singapore.
Oh yes, that's we're about to cut this episode and get into Singapore talk. So thanks so much for stopping by and talking with me today.
Absolutely.
If you want to keep up with me in between episodes, you can find me on Instagram at Hey K in the Bay. That has been this week's episode of the As Told By podcast. I think I will be back on location somewhere when you hear from me with a new episode after this. So until then, peace.